Hello, and welcome back to Void Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy the Void Whispers that creep in during the dead of night, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. It was only a children's book. At least that was what I kept telling myself. The cover had a title written in large rainbow-colored blocks, the kind of bright letters you would expect to see in a preschool classroom. The pages were thick, almost like cardboard, made for small hands that might tear normal paper. It looked more like a baby book than anything else. According to the little label printed near the bottom of the back cover, the recommended reading age was 3 to 5 years old. There should have been nothing frightening about it. Zoe and I found the book inside a dusty cardboard box in the storage room at Colvin Preparatory School, where we both worked part-time after classes ended for the day. Mrs. Lemon, the woman who owned and managed the school, liked to call us after-school teachers. I think she believed the title made the job sound more professional. Maybe she thought it made us feel important. In reality, we were babysitters. The most educational thing we did on most days was remind children not to pick their noses while eating crackers, or tell them that throwing plastic building blocks at each other was not an acceptable way to solve an argument. Our real responsibility was simple. Keep the children safe. Keep them entertained. Make sure nobody broke a bone, escaped through a window, or called their parents crying. That was about it. The children at Colvin Preparatory School mostly came from wealthy families. Their parents were doctors, lawyers, business owners, and people with job titles I had never heard before. They paid more money for their children's education than my family had probably spent on my entire childhood. That was also why I stayed at the job. It was not exciting. It was not glamorous. It was certainly not something I planned to do for the rest of my life. But for a part-time job, the pay was surprisingly good. Private school money, I guess. The best part of working there was Zoe. I had known her for several months, and she somehow managed to make even the most boring afternoons entertaining. She had a sarcastic comment for everything and never seemed afraid to say exactly what she was thinking. I liked that about her. Actually, I liked almost everything about her. I had never told her. I probably never would have. That afternoon, there were only a few children staying after school. Mrs. Lemon told us that it was a popular week for family vacations. Several parents had taken their kids out of town, which meant the usual noisy classroom was unusually quiet. Mrs. Lemon, always looking for a way to get the most work possible out of the people she was paying, decided that having both Zoe and me watching 5 children was unnecessary. She told us to clean out the storage closet while she watched the kids herself. Neither of us complained. Honestly, cleaning a forgotten storage room sounded much easier than stopping 6-year-olds from fighting over crayons. The storage room was located at the end of one of the older hallways in the school. The moment I opened the door, a smell of old paper, cardboard, and dust rolled out. The room was small and packed with junk. Metal shelves covered every wall. Boxes were stacked on top of other boxes. Old classroom decorations, broken toys, faded posters, folders, and pieces of furniture filled nearly every available space. The dust was unbelievable. Even with the storage room mostly dark, I could see thick gray layers covering the shelves. Some of the boxes looked like nobody had touched them in decades. Zoe stood behind me and immediately started coughing. Can you turn on the light, Hooper? She asked. I reached beside the door and flicked the switch. Nothing happened. The room remained dark. Hooper? Sorry, I said. I did. I looked up at the ceiling. There was a light fixture hanging above us, but the socket was empty. No bulb. Well, damn, Zoe said. I glanced nervously toward the hallway. Don't say that, I told her. Mrs. Lemon might hear you. The school had strict rules about language around the children. Not that there were any kids nearby, but Mrs. Lemon had an almost supernatural ability to appear whenever one of us said something inappropriate. More importantly, I did not want Zoe getting fired. She was the only reason most shifts were tolerable. Zoe gave me a serious expression. Shit, she whispered. That's right. I wouldn't want to lose this amazing chance of a lifetime. I tried not to smile. I probably failed. We should get started, I said. We left the storage room door open so the fluorescent lights from the hallway could shine inside. It was not enough to fully light the room, but it allowed us to see what we were doing. I grabbed the nearest cardboard box. The cardboard felt strangely soft under my fingers, weakened by age and moisture. I pulled open the top. Inside were stacks of old manila folders. I opened one and saw what appeared to be employee records from years ago. Names, addresses, dates of employment, old photographs. Nothing interesting. Box of junk here, I announced. There was no answer. I looked over my shoulder. Zoe was leaning against the wall, looking at her phone. I cleared my throat loudly. She ignored me. I coughed again. Finally, she looked up. What? I pointed at the boxes. What about you? She sighed dramatically. Fine. She put her phone away and reached for a smaller box near her feet. It was about the size and shape of a pizza box. Unlike the other boxes, it had been placed awkwardly on top of a larger container, almost as though someone had thrown it into the closet quickly without caring where it landed. Zoe pulled at the old tape. The cardboard tore easily. Well, she said, let's see what treasure Mrs. Lemon has been hiding from us. She ripped away a strip of cardboard and tossed it into the darkness behind her. Then she reached inside. She pulled out a book. At first, I thought it was exactly what it appeared to be. A children's book. From where I stood, I could only see the cover because the hallway light was shining across it. There was a bright yellow sun in the background. The sun looked handmade, almost like paper mache, with thick rays sticking out around it. Standing in front of the sun was a platinum blonde girl, wearing a pink dress. She had pigtails resting stiffly against her shoulders. Her cheeks were covered with perfect circles of bright pink blush. She was smiling. Something about the picture immediately made me uncomfortable. I stepped closer. That was when I realized she was not a child. The person on the cover was a grown woman. She had been dressed and styled to look like a little girl. Her blonde pigtails were too stiff. Her pink dress looked too childish. The circles of makeup on her cheeks were too bright, and the smile was wrong. It was much too large. Every tooth seemed visible. The expression looked painful, as though someone had ordered her to smile and told her she was not allowed to stop. What the hell? I asked. Zoe did not seem bothered. She laughed. Oh, man. Look at this thing. She wiped dust from the cover with her sleeve. How long do you think this has been sitting here? This thing is probably older than Mrs. Lemon. I continued staring at the woman. Even though it was only a photograph printed on a book cover, I had the strange feeling that she was staring back. Put it down, I said. Zoe looked at me. What? Just put it down. Let's finish cleaning. She smiled. Hold on. We have to read it. No, we really don't. She sat down on one of the larger boxes and patted another box in front of her. Sit. I hesitated. Then I sat down. Like I said, I have never been very good at telling a girl no, especially Zoe. Okay, I said. Quickly. She opened the book. Then, using the cheerful voice she normally used when reading stories to the younger children, she turned the cover toward me with exaggerated excitement. I looked away almost immediately. I did not want to see the woman smile again. Zoe began reading. The National Television Network presents Meet Sunny Sandy. Something cold moved through my stomach. I do not know why. It was only the title page. There was nothing openly frightening about those words. Still, I suddenly wanted her to stop. I should have grabbed the book from her right then. I should have thrown it back into the box. Maybe I should have taken it outside and burned it. Instead, I stayed where I was. Zoe turned the page. Meet Sunny Sandy. Sunny Sandy lives in Sunnyside Square, where the sun can never stop shining. Her voice sounded playful, the kind of voice adults use when reading to toddlers. I stared at the floor. Sunny Sandy is a good girl. She is always sunny. She is never sad, or angry, or tired, or hungry, or scared. Zoe paused. For the first time, I noticed how silent the storage room had become. I could no longer hear the children playing down the hall. I could not hear Mrs. Lemon. I could not even hear the hum of the fluorescent lights outside. Zoe continued. That would be bad. Sunny Sandy is a good girl. She is always sunny. Always. The final word seemed to stay in the room. Always. 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 The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I realized I had been holding my breath. When Zoe finally closed the book, I let the air out slowly. I looked up at her. I expected her to laugh. Maybe she would say the book was creepy. Maybe she would make fun of me for looking nervous. Instead, she was smiling. Not her normal smile. This was different. Much wider. Much brighter. Her lips were pulled back farther than they should have been. Her eyes stared directly into mine. How precious, she said softly. I did not answer. Wasn't that precious? Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Her voice sounded happy. Too happy. There was no humor in it. No sarcasm. No Zoe. Her eyes felt like sunlight burning against my face. I stood quickly. Not particularly. The smile remained. Let's get back to work. I reached for the book. Zoe tightened her hands around it. Now, don't be silly, Hooper. Her voice was gentle, almost motherly. We're going to read it again. My stomach dropped. She reached out with one hand and grabbed my wrist. Then she pulled. Hard. I almost fell forward. I stared at her in shock. Zoe was not especially strong. At least I had never thought she was. But her grip felt like iron. Zoe, let go. She kept smiling. We're going to read it again. No. She pulled harder. I tried to free my hand. Her smile never moved. Sit down, Hooper. Like hell. I grabbed the book with my free hand and pulled. For a second, neither of us let go. Then I yanked with all my strength. The book came free. Zoe fell backward. Everything happened too quickly. She had been sitting on a box with a wooden shelving unit directly behind her. There was not enough room. The back of her head struck one of the wooden crossbeams. The sound was terrible. A hard, wet crack. I dropped the book. Zoe. She collapsed between the box and the shelf. Her body landed awkwardly, with her arms and legs raised at strange angles. For one horrifying second, she reminded me of an insect that had fallen onto its back and could not turn over. Then I saw the blood. It was running from behind her head, fast, much too fast. A dark red pool spread underneath her hair. I could not see the wound clearly, but from the amount of blood, I knew it had to be serious. Oh, God. I dropped to my knees beside her. Zoe? She looked at me. She was still smiling, even with blood pouring from her head. Even while lying twisted on the floor, she was smiling. Come on, I shouted. I slid my arms underneath her. We have to get you to a hospital. Her voice was perfectly calm. Thank you, Hooper. Her eyes stayed on mine. That's very kind of you. I nearly dropped her. There was something so unnatural about hearing those polite words while blood ran down her neck. I carried her out of the storage room. The hallway lights suddenly seemed painfully bright. Mrs. Lemon saw us and screamed. After that, everything happened in a blur. There was panic, questions, blood. Mrs. Lemon calling someone. I kept trying to explain what had happened, but I do not remember exactly what I said. Mrs. Lemon decided not to wait for an ambulance. She helped me get Zoe into the passenger seat of her pickup truck and drove her straight to the hospital. From the moment Zoe struck the wooden beam until the moment I placed her inside that truck, she never stopped smiling. Not once. She never cried. She never screamed. She never looked afraid. She simply sat there, with blood covering the back of her shirt, and that bright, impossible smile stretched across her face. Then Mrs. Lemon drove away. I was left at the school with the children. The rest of the afternoon felt unreal. I watched the kids until their parents arrived. I played pretend games with them. I helped one girl build a plastic castle. I stopped two boys from arguing over a toy truck. I handed out snacks. I smiled when the parents came. I told them to have a good evening. The whole time, my mind kept returning to Zoe. I imagined her in the hospital, doctors surrounding her, someone cleaning the blood from her hair, someone asking her questions. Was she still smiling? I kept looking at my phone. No calls, no messages, nothing from Mrs. Lemon, nothing from Zoe. By the time the last child left, the school had become completely silent. I should have gone home. I wanted to go home. But I also knew that once I was alone, I would start thinking, really thinking. I would hear that crack again. I would see the blood. I would see Zoe smiling. So I stayed. I walked slowly through the empty school. Eventually, without making a conscious decision, I found myself standing outside the storage room. The door was still open. The light from the hallway stretched across the floor, and there, exactly where I had dropped it, was the book. The woman on the cover was smiling up at me. Sunny Sandy. I stood there for a long time. Then I remembered Zoe's words. We're going to read it again. My hands began shaking. Something had happened to Zoe after she read that book. I knew how ridiculous that sounded. Books do not change people. A children's book cannot take control of someone. It was impossible. But Zoe had not been acting like herself. The smile, the voice, the strength in her hand. This book had done something to my friend. I needed to understand what. Slowly, I stepped into the closet. I picked up the book. The cover felt cold. I opened it. This time, instead of listening to someone else read the words, I examined every page carefully. At first, everything looked normal. Boring, even. The book looked like something produced for a children's television program sometime in the 1990s. There were photographs of Sunny Sandy standing in a colorful cartoon town. One page showed her walking through Sunnyside Square. Another showed her moving down a bright brick main street. She waved at people. She smiled at children. The papier-mâché sun appeared somewhere in almost every picture. Then I reached the page that said, "She is never sad." I stopped. Sunny Sandy was standing in a small backyard. At her feet was a striped cat. The cat wore a collar, On the collar was a little name tag, Mr. Tiger. The cat was dead. There was no blood, no graphic wound. But its body was stiff and still. Its eyes were closed. Sunny Sandy stood over it, smiling. I turned the page. She is never angry. Sunny Sandy was sitting inside a country church. Beside her was an older woman dressed entirely in black. A funeral. I could see part of a coffin at the front of the church. Everyone in the room looked miserable, except Sunny Sandy. She was smiling. I turned another page. She is never tired. The picture showed Sunny Sandy sitting alone in a tiny closet. The room was smaller than the storage room where I stood. Her hair was messy. Her dress was stained. Her skin looked pale. There were dark circles around her eyes. She looked like she had not slept, bathed, or gone outside in days. But she was smiling. She's never hungry. Sunny Sandy sat at an empty table. There was no food. Her face looked thinner. Her cheekbones were sharp. Her arms were frighteningly narrow, still smiling. She is never scared. Sunny Sandy stood in a dark room. Something was behind her. I could not tell what it was. A person, maybe, or only a shadow. Whatever it was much taller than she was. Sunny Sandy stared directly into the camera, smiling. My hands started trembling harder. I wanted to close the book. I should have. Instead, I turned to the final page. She is always sunny. Always. Sunny Sandy was lying inside a coffin. She looked older than she did in the earlier photographs. Much older. Her blonde hair was gray at the roots, but someone had still arranged it into those childish pigtails. Someone had still put circles of pink makeup on her cheeks. She was wearing the same pink dress. Her hands were folded across her chest. She was dead, and she was smiling. The same smile. The smile from the cover. The smile Zoe had worn while blood poured from her head. I dropped the book. I left the storage room. I do not remember walking home. I only remember realizing, sometime later, that I was sitting in my bedroom. I was staring at the wall, and I was smiling. I tried to stop. I could not. I pulled at the corners of my mouth with my fingers. The moment I let go, the smile returned. I started crying. At least I think I did. I could feel tears running down my cheeks. But when I looked in the mirror, I still looked happy, peaceful, sunny. I think she is inside me now. Sunny Sandy. I can feel her watching. Not exactly from inside my head. Not exactly from the room. Somewhere else. Every time I begin to feel afraid, my smile grows wider. Every time I feel angry, something inside me pushes the feeling down. When I think about Zoe lying in the hospital, bleeding because of me, I want to scream, but my face looks calm. When I imagine that horrible book sitting in the dark storage room, waiting for someone else to open it, I want to cry, but I keep smiling. Sunny Sandy is watching me. She wants to know whether I'm behaving. She wants me to be good. She wants me to be sunny. I do not know how long she will allow me to write this. That is why I am posting it here. I need someone to know. Maybe somebody will understand what that book is. Maybe someone will know where it came from. Maybe it was part of an old television show. Maybe there are other copies. Maybe there are other people like Zoe. Like me. I wish I were fighting back tears right now. I wish my hands were shaking from fear. Actually, they are shaking. But you would never know it if you were standing in front of me, if you could see my face. You would probably think I had just received the happiest news of my life. You would think I was reading a love letter from Zoe. You would think everything was fine. I look peaceful, I look happy, but I am scared. I am so scared. I can feel the smile stretching wider. I think she knows what I am doing. I think she can see these words. I have to finish before. Happy Hooper is a good boy. He's always happy. He is never sad, or angry, or tired, or hungry, or scared. That would be bad. Happy Hooper is a good boy. He is always happy. Always. Story 2. I haven't slept properly in days. Maybe longer. I honestly don't know anymore. Time has started to lose its meaning. The hours seem to melt into each other, and every morning feels exactly like the night before. I keep the lights on because darkness makes it worse, but the light doesn't really help either. Nothing does. Coffee stopped working days ago. Cold showers don't clear my head. Walking around the apartment only makes me more nervous because every shadow looks like someone standing in the corner, waiting for me to turn around. The truth is, I'm terrified of closing my eyes because every time I do, even for a second, I see it happen again. Your faces, your fear, your screams, the exact moment your lives end. I see the final seconds of people I know and people I have never met. I see strangers who may be living on the other side of the world. I see old people, children, mothers, fathers, people walking to work, people lying in bed, people laughing with friends. I see all of them at the moment when everything they thought they were going to become suddenly disappears. Every future ends. Every plan stops. Every unfinished sentence is left unfinished forever. And somehow, for reasons I still don't understand, I have seen it all. I know how you die. I know how everyone dies. I suppose I should start at the beginning, although even that is becoming difficult to remember clearly. My memories feel mixed up now, like someone dropped them on the floor and put them back together in the wrong order. I don't know exactly what day it is. I barely remember what I did yesterday. Sometimes I look in the mirror and have to remind myself that the exhausted person staring back at me is still me. But there is one thing I know with complete certainty. One fact that has grown so large inside my mind that it has pushed almost everything else away. I know how you all die. First time it happened, I thought I was having a panic attack. I was sitting on a city bus on my way home from work. It had been a long day, and I was exhausted. The bus was warm and crowded, and the constant vibration of the engine had almost put me to sleep. I was sitting by the window with my forehead pressed against the cold glass, watching buildings and traffic pass in a blur. We drove by a construction site. I remember that clearly. There were workers in bright safety vests shouting to each other. A section of pavement had been torn apart. Orange barriers lined the street, and thick wires hung from temporary poles above the road. Everything looked ordinary. Loud, messy, annoying, but ordinary. Then the world changed. There was no warning. One moment, I was sitting on the bus. The next, I was standing in the middle of a cracked road. Rain was falling hard around me. I could feel cold drops hitting my face. Water bounced off the black tarmac. The sky was dark, almost evening, although seconds earlier it had been the middle of the afternoon. I didn't understand where I was. I looked around, confused and frightened. Then I saw the boy. He was riding a bicycle toward me. He couldn't have been older than 16 or 17. He wore a gray hoodie with the hood down, and white earbuds were in his ears. One of them caught the light from a street lamp as he passed beneath it. He was smiling slightly. Maybe he was listening to music. Maybe he was thinking about dinner. Maybe he was planning to meet his friends later. Whatever he was thinking, he had no idea what was coming. I opened my mouth. I wanted to shout at him. I didn't even know what I was warning him about yet. I only knew that something was wrong. Then a delivery van came flying around the corner. It happened so fast. The driver never slowed down. The boy never looked up. I screamed. The van hit him. The sound was worse than anything I could have imagined. Metal against the bicycle. Metal against flesh. The terrible snapping sound of something inside a human body breaking. The boy disappeared beneath the front of the vehicle, and the van finally stopped several yards later. There was a long screech of brakes. Then silence. I remember staring at the road. I remember the bicycle lying twisted near the curb. I remember thinking that a human body should not bend in the way his had. Then I blinked. I was back on the bus. My forehead was no longer touching the window. I was standing halfway out of my seat, screaming. Everyone around me was staring. A woman had dropped her phone. A child was crying. An old woman sitting across the aisle leaned toward me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I couldn't answer at first. My entire body was shaking. Then I looked outside. The construction site was still there. The workers were still shouting. And the boy was alive. He was riding past the bus on his bicycle, wearing the same gray hoodie, the same earbuds in his ears. I pressed my face against the window and watched him disappear behind us. For several minutes, I couldn't breathe properly. The old woman asked again if I needed help. I told her I was fine. I lied. I convinced myself it had been some kind of hallucination. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I hadn't eaten enough. Maybe I was dehydrated. Maybe I had fallen asleep for half a second and experienced an incredibly vivid dream. There had to be a reasonable explanation. There always had to be one. That was what I believed then. The second vision happened the next afternoon. I was in a supermarket. A woman was pushing a shopping trolley a few feet in front of me. She reached for a jar on a high shelf, and as she pulled it down, another jar slipped beside it. It fell. The glass hit the floor. It shattered. And suddenly, I wasn't in the supermarket anymore. I saw the same woman lying in a dark car park. There was blood beneath her. A lot of blood. She was still alive, but only barely. Her hands were pressed against her neck. She was trying to breathe, trying to scream. Nothing came out except wet, choking sounds. I saw someone running away between parked cars. I couldn't see their face. The woman looked directly at me. I don't think she could really see me, but it felt like she could. Her eyes begged me for help. Then she stopped moving. I blinked. I was back in the supermarket. The broken jar was still on the floor. The woman was completely fine. She looked down at the glass and laughed nervously. "Oops," she said. I left my shopping basket where it was and walked out of the store. After that, the visions came more often. A man jogged past me while I was walking through a wooded park. One second, he was running under the trees. The next, I saw him lying face down on a kitchen floor. Smoke was filling the room. A closed door separated him from the fire. His fingers twitched against the tiles while thick black smoke gathered above him. Then I was back in the park. The man continued jogging. He never noticed me staring at him. Another time I walked past a playground. A little girl was laughing as she ran toward a swing. I blinked. She was floating face down in a pond. Her hair moved around her head like black ink spreading through water. Her arms drifted slowly beneath the surface. I opened my eyes and almost fell to my knees. The girl was alive again. She was laughing. Her mother was standing nearby looking at her phone. I wanted to run over and warn them. But warn them about what? A pond? There were no ponds anywhere near the playground. The visions never told me when these things would happen. They never told me where. They only showed me the end. That was the worst part. At first, I tried to remember every face. I wrote descriptions in notebooks. The boy on the bike, the woman in the car park, the jogging man, the little girl. I tried searching news reports to see whether any of the deaths had happened. Nothing. Not yet, anyway. I began wondering whether I was seeing possible futures rather than certain ones. Maybe they were warnings. Maybe I was supposed to stop them. That idea gave me hope. For a while, then the visions began moving closer to me. It was no longer only strangers. One afternoon at work, my co-worker, Jenny, was decorating the break room for someone's birthday. She was standing on a small step stool, reaching up to attach a paper decoration to the wall. She laughed when the stool wobbled beneath her. I looked at her, and everything changed. I saw Jenny sitting inside her car. She was slumped over the steering wheel. Music was still playing through the speakers. The windows were closed, the doors were locked, the engine was running. A hose had been connected to the exhaust. I saw smoke filling the car. I saw the terrible stillness of her body. Then I was back in the break room. Jenny was smiling at me. "You look awful," she said. "Seriously, are you getting sick?" I couldn't speak. How do you tell someone you have seen their death? How do you ask a friend whether they are planning to kill themselves when they are standing in front of you laughing? I tried. I asked if she was okay. She looked confused. I asked if anything was wrong at home. She became uncomfortable. Finally, she told me she was fine and asked why I was acting so strange. I didn't know what to say. A few days later, I saw my neighbor die. Mr. Carver lived 2 doors down from me. He was an older man who spent most mornings caring for the plants on his balcony. I passed him in the hallway while he was carrying a watering can. For 1 second, I saw him during a violent storm. The lights in his apartment were flashing on and off. He was lying on the floor, clutching his chest. His pacemaker had failed. Rain hit the windows. Thunder shook the building. He tried to reach his phone. He didn't make it. Then the hallway returned. Mr. Carver smiled. "Morning," he said. I stared at him. I almost told him. I almost said everything. Instead, I asked when he had last seen his doctor. He gave me a strange look. That was when I realized how insane I sounded. The visions became impossible to explain when I saw my sister. She was sitting at my kitchen table. She was brushing her hair while complaining about a man she had started dating. She was laughing. She looked happy. Then I blinked. She was lying in a ditch beside a dark road. Her body was twisted at an unnatural angle. Her phone lay only a few feet from her hand. She was still breathing. Barely. In the distance, red taillights disappeared around a bend. Someone had hit her. Someone had left her there. I screamed her name. The kitchen returned. My sister dropped the hairbrush. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I grabbed her. I begged her not to go out that night. She laughed at first. Then she saw my face. She asked what had happened. I told her I had a bad feeling. She told me I was being ridiculous. I became angry. I shouted. I begged. I even tried to take her car keys. Eventually, she pushed me away. She said I was frightening her. I watched her leave. That night, I sat awake until morning, expecting the phone to ring. It didn't. She survived. Nothing happened. I should have been relieved. Instead, I became even more afraid. Because if the vision wasn't going to happen that night, then when would it happen? Tomorrow, next year, 20 years from now. Was it even possible to stop? I stopped going outside. It didn't help. The visions no longer needed people to stand in front of me. They started coming on their own, at random, without warning. Sometimes I would be sitting on the couch and suddenly see someone falling from a building. Sometimes I would be brushing my teeth and see a family burning inside a house. Sometimes I would blink and see a drowning, a shooting, a car crash, a murder. God, the murders are the worst. There are things people do to each other that I wish I had never seen. Things I cannot describe. Things I will never forget. I started sleeping less. Then I stopped sleeping almost completely. Every time I closed my eyes, another death appeared. Sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds. They came faster and faster. I began hearing screams even when the visions were gone. I covered the mirrors because I was afraid I might see my own death again. Yes, I've seen mine too. I'm not going to describe it. I don't think I can. For a while, I still believed the visions were warnings. I thought maybe I had been given this curse because I was supposed to save people. That belief was the only thing keeping me sane. Then, 3 days ago, everything changed. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment. I hadn't slept in almost 2 days. My eyes were burning. My hands were shaking. Then the visions started. Not one, not 10. All of them. Every death I had ever seen came rushing back at once. The boy on the bicycle, the woman in the car park, the jogging man, the little girl, Jenny, Mr. Carver, my sister, people I had never met, thousands of faces, maybe millions. It was like standing beneath a tidal wave made of human suffering. I saw car crashes happening beside fires. I saw buildings collapsing while oceans rose over cities. I saw people running, people praying, people holding their children, people screaming names that nobody would ever answer. The images overlapped so quickly that I couldn't separate them. I fell to the floor. My entire body began convulsing. I bit my tongue. I tasted blood. I tried to scream, but I couldn't breathe. Still, the visions continued. They stacked on top of each other. One death, another, another, until every person seemed to be dying at the same time. And suddenly I understood. The visions were never showing me separate events. Not really. They were pieces, fragments, different views of the same moment. The boy on the road, the woman in the car park, the man in the burning kitchen, the girl in the pond, Jenny in her car, my neighbor during the storm, my sister in the ditch. All of them were connected. All of them were happening during one single event. One moment, one ending. The deaths are synchronized. That is why the visions have been getting stronger. That is why they have been coming faster. I thought I was watching different futures. I wasn't. I was watching one future from millions of different places. A countdown. Something is coming. I don't know what it is. Maybe there is no word for it. Maybe it isn't something our minds were ever meant to understand. But I can feel it now. I can feel it behind everything. Behind the walls. Behind the sky. Behind reality itself. It feels like something enormous is standing on the other side of a thin curtain, waiting for the exact second when it can step through. And I think it knows that I have seen it. Since that night, the visions have become quieter. That should make me feel better. It doesn't. Now there are long periods where I see nothing. No deaths, no screams. Just silence. And somehow the silence is worse. Because it feels like the moment before something begins. The pause before a bomb explodes. The breath before the scream. I tried calling my sister. She didn't answer. I tried calling Jenny. Nothing. I called emergency services, but what was I supposed to tell them? that everyone was going to die, that the world was ending. They would think I was insane. Maybe I am. Maybe none of this is real. I keep hoping that is true. I keep hoping I finally lost my mind and all of these visions are only happening inside my head. But deep down, I know better. I know what I saw. I know how you die. I know how my sister dies. I know how Jenny dies. I know how Mr. Carver dies. I know how the old woman from the bus dies. I know how the person reading this dies. And I know how I die. I wish I didn't. I wish I could forget all of it. But it has already been written, already decided. Every road has been chosen. Every final breath is waiting. There is nothing left to change, nothing left to prevent. All we can do now is wait. I don't know exactly how much time remains, maybe hours, maybe minutes, maybe less. But I know the countdown is almost finished. And a few moments ago, something started making a sound outside my apartment door. At first, I thought it was footsteps, slow ones, coming down the hallway. Then they stopped directly outside. I held my breath. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then came a soft scratching sound. Not knocking, scratching, like fingernails moving slowly across the wood. I haven't moved. I'm sitting here now, staring at the door. The scratching has stopped, but there's something else. Breathing, slow, deep, patient. Whatever is standing out there knows I'm inside. And somehow I know this is the moment I saw. My moment. My ending. I wish I didn't know how you all die. I wish I didn't know how I die. But unfortunately, I do. It is already written, already chosen. All that's left now is the waiting. And from the sound outside my door, I don't think I'll be waiting much longer. Story 3. This happened a few years ago, back when I was still a university student. By the time I reached my second year, I had started dating a girl named Lauren. We had been together for most of that year, and although we were both still young, I was already convinced that she might be the person I would eventually settle down with. Lauren was Irish with a soft accent, pale skin, and faint freckles scattered across her cheeks. She was kind, funny, stubborn when she wanted to be, and somehow always managed to make me feel comfortable around her. Things between us had been going so well that when she finally suggested I come home with her and meet her family, I agreed. At the time, I thought I was simply taking another step forward in our relationship. Looking back, part of me wishes I had never gone. Lauren's parents lived in the Irish Midlands, somewhere around an hour or two outside Dublin. We took a short flight over from England, and after landing, we began the drive toward her hometown. Once we left the motorway and started following the smaller country roads, I was surprised by how flat the landscape was. Before visiting Ireland, I had always imagined the country as nothing but green mountains, rocky hills, and rugged cliffs stretching beneath gray skies. The countryside around Lauren's home was completely different from that image. There were wide fields, farms, narrow roads, cattle grazing behind old fences, and large stretches of open land that seemed to continue forever. In the distance, there were areas of dark bogland that looked almost empty. Lauren's parents lived in a tiny country village with a population of no more than a few hundred people. It was the kind of place where everyone probably knew everyone else, and where strangers were immediately noticed. The village itself was lovely. There were small houses, quiet lanes, old stone walls, and fields surrounding almost every side of it. Not far beyond the village were several working farms, large cow fields, and an enormous stretch of bogland. Like most boyfriends meeting their girlfriend's family for the first time, I was nervous. However, I was probably more nervous than I needed to be. Being English, I had been worrying about the complicated history between England and Ireland. I knew those feelings weren't necessarily going to matter to Lauren's family, especially in modern times. But my mind kept finding reasons to make me uncomfortable. I kept imagining myself walking into the house and Lauren's father immediately deciding he hated me. After all, I thought, what Irish father dreams of hearing that his daughter has brought home an English boyfriend? Thankfully, my fears were completely wrong. Lauren's parents could not have been more welcoming. Her mother was exactly as Lauren had described her. She was warm, friendly, and had the kind of personality that made you feel as though you had known her much longer than a few hours. Lauren's father, John, was quieter. He was polite and somewhat old-fashioned, but not unfriendly. When I first called him Mr. Mon, he immediately corrected me. "There's no Mr. Mon here," he said. "Call me John." Those were practically the first words he ever said to me. After that, I began to relax. The first couple of days passed surprisingly well. Lauren's mother seemed to like me. John treated me with respect, and even their border collie, Dexter, appeared to accept me. There was plenty of food, plenty of conversation, and several heavy family dinners that left me feeling like I wouldn't need to eat again for days. By every reasonable measure, the visit was going perfectly, and yet I couldn't relax completely. Something was bothering me. I couldn't explain what it was. From almost the moment we arrived, I had carried this strange feeling that something bad was going to happen. It wasn't a clear thought. I wasn't imagining a particular accident or disaster. It was simply a deep, uncomfortable feeling sitting somewhere in the back of my mind. At first, I assumed it was anxiety. Meeting Lauren's parents was important to me, and perhaps I was simply more nervous than I realized. But the longer we stayed in the village, the stronger the feeling became. Sometimes I would be sitting at the dinner table, listening to Lauren and her parents talking, and suddenly I would feel uncomfortable for no reason. Other times I would look through a window at the quiet countryside outside and feel as though something was wrong out there. There was no evidence for it. Nothing had happened. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. It felt less like nervousness and more like a warning. On the third night of our stay, that feeling became so intense that I couldn't sleep. Lauren was lying peacefully beside me while I stared at the ceiling in the darkness. The entire house was silent. Every few minutes, I would close my eyes and try to force myself to sleep, but my mind refused to settle. I kept thinking about the village, the empty roads, the surrounding fields, the dark bogland beyond the farms. I don't know why. Hours passed. Eventually, a faint gray light began leaking through the bedroom curtains. I reached for my phone and checked the time. It was around 6 in the morning. Realizing that I wasn't going to sleep, I decided to get dressed and go for a walk. I thought the cold morning air might clear my head. I tried to move quietly so I wouldn't wake Lauren, but as I pulled on my clothes, she stirred. She opened her eyes and looked at me. "Where are you going?" I told her I couldn't sleep and was planning to take a short walk. Lauren, being Lauren, immediately decided she was coming with me. I told her she didn't have to. She ignored me. A few minutes later, we were downstairs. We decided to bring Dexter with us. Lauren also took a ball and a hurling stick so we could play with him along the way. The village was almost completely silent when we stepped outside. The air was cold and fresh, and the sky was beginning to brighten with the first light of morning. For a little while, I actually started feeling better. We followed the road leading out of the village, with Dexter happily walking ahead of us. Eventually, we passed a secluded farm property belonging to a local family. After that, the road brought us toward the edge of the bogland. Lauren told me she had grown up around this area her entire life, but had never actually explored the bog. For years, much of the land had belonged to a company that harvested peat, which meant people weren't supposed to wander freely through it. Apparently, the company had recently gone out of business or stopped operating in the area, leaving parts of the land abandoned. Standing there that morning, curiosity got the better of us. We decided to explore. At first, there wasn't anything particularly frightening about the place. The bog was quiet and strangely beautiful. As we wandered farther, we eventually discovered a trail leading into what appeared to be a man-made forest. The trees had been planted in organized sections, though years of growth had made the place feel more natural than it probably once was. The deeper we walked, the darker it became beneath the trees. After some time, we came across something else. A narrow railway line ran through the forest. It had probably once been used by the peat company to transport materials across the bog. The track was old and apparently abandoned, disappearing in both directions between the trees. Lauren and I became curious. We wanted to know where it went. Instead of continuing along the trail, we began following the railway. Dexter stayed close at first, occasionally running ahead before returning to us. We stepped carefully over the endless rows of wooden railway sleepers as we followed the line deeper into the forest. The morning light didn't reach the ground very well there. Everything around us seemed dull and gray. That was when we heard something moving among the trees, a rustling sound. Lauren and I both stopped. Dexter immediately became alert. At first, I wasn't frightened. The sound seemed too large to be a rabbit or fox, so I assumed it was probably a deer. I stared into the trees, squinting because my eyes were still tired from not sleeping. Then I saw something. Farther inside the forest, partially hidden behind a tree, was a pale shape. Something was watching us. I narrowed my eyes. The figure didn't move. I couldn't tell whether I was looking at an animal or another person. There was only a faint silhouette visible between the trees. "What is that?" I asked. Lauren stared in the same direction. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, I think it's a cow." She didn't sound convinced. "It probably belongs to the Doyle farm we passed." That explanation made some sense. Cattle could escape fields. Maybe one had wandered into the forest. Still, something about the shape looked wrong. Lauren reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She opened the camera and zoomed toward the distant figure. I stood beside her, waiting for her to tell me what she could see. The strange feeling that had followed me since arriving in Ireland suddenly became stronger than ever. My stomach tightened. The hairs on my arms rose. Everything inside me was telling me that we needed to leave. Then Lauren screamed. "Oh my God!" Her voice echoed between the trees. I immediately turned toward her. "What?" She held the phone out. I looked at the screen. At first, my brain couldn't understand what I was seeing. The figure was standing behind a tree. Its body looked human, completely naked. Two pale arms were wrapped around the trunk as it leaned out from behind it. But where a human head should have been, there was something else. The head of a cow. White fur covered its face. Its eyes appeared completely black. They were open wide and unblinking. The creature stood perfectly still, staring directly toward us. "Babes," Lauren whispered, her voice shaking. "What is that?" "I don't know." My own voice barely sounded human. Part of me still hoped that exhaustion was making me see things. shadows. Maybe the poor light was confusing us. Maybe someone was wearing a mask. Maybe there was some logical explanation waiting for us. But nothing about it felt logical. The creature continued watching us. Then Dexter noticed it. Until that moment, he had apparently been more interested in the smells around the railway than whatever stood between the trees. But he suddenly followed our gaze. His body stiffened. A low growl came from his throat. "Dexter," Lauren said cautiously. The dog exploded into barking. Before either of us could stop him, he raced into the forest. "Dexter, no!" Lauren ran after him. "Lauren, don't!" She didn't listen. Within seconds, both she and Dexter disappeared among the trees. For a moment, I remained standing beside the railway. Every instinct inside me screamed at me not to follow. I wanted to run in the opposite direction. But Lauren was in there. Whatever that creature was, my girlfriend was now somewhere in the forest with it. I couldn't leave her. Swallowing my fear, I entered the trees. "Lauren!" I could hear her shouting Dexter's name somewhere ahead. I followed her voice. The farther I went, the more frightened she sounded. Then I heard another noise, growling, snarling. Dexter. But underneath the dog's aggressive sounds was something else. A deep groan. It sounded wrong. Not quite human. Not quite animal. It was a sound filled with pain. I pushed through the trees faster. Then I saw Lauren. She was standing completely still. I followed her gaze. On the ground in front of her was Dexter. His jaws were locked around the creature's throat. The thing we had seen watching us was lying on the forest floor. Up close, there was no possibility of mistaking it for a normal animal. Its body was shaped like a human body. It had arms, hands, legs, and feet. But its head was unmistakably that of a cow. Dexter was tearing into its neck. Blood had soaked through the pale fur around its throat, turning it dark red. The creature barely defended itself. Its human-like hands weakly pushed against Dexter's body, but there seemed to be almost no strength behind them. It made those horrible groaning sounds over and over. The sound went straight through me. It didn't roar in anger. It didn't fight back. It sounded terrified. It sounded like something dying. Lauren began screaming, "Do something!" I didn't know what to do. I was terrified of the creature. But I also knew we couldn't simply stand there and watch Dexter tear it apart. "Do something!" Lauren screamed again. I grabbed the hurling stick from her hands. Then I forced myself forward. Every step felt wrong. I kept expecting the creature to suddenly leap to its feet and attack me. I held the hurl up defensively as I approached Dexter. When I got close enough, I grabbed his collar. "Come on! Dexter!" He refused to release the creature. I pulled harder. Nothing. The dog seemed completely lost in some primitive fury. Eventually, I twisted his collar tightly enough that he had no choice but to let go. The moment his jaws released the creature's throat, I dragged him backward. Lauren rushed over and attached his lead. Even with both of us restraining him, Dexter continued barking violently. His teeth and the fur around his mouth were stained with blood. We tied the lead around the trunk of a thin tree. Dexter kept pulling against it, desperate to return to the creature. Then Lauren and I looked down. The creature was still alive. Its hands moved over the open wound in its throat. Its legs scraped against the leaves and soil. Blood continued running between its fingers. Those terrible groans filled the forest. Lauren covered her ears. "Do something!" "What am I supposed to do?" I shouted. "Anything, please, it's suffering." I looked down at the hurling stick in my hand. Then I looked at Lauren. She looked at the stick, too. Neither of us said anything. We both understood. There was no hospital we could take this thing to. No explanation we could give, even if we somehow called emergency services. What would we say? That we had found a naked man with the head of a cow? That our dog had nearly killed it? The creature was clearly dying. Every sound it made seemed full of unbearable pain. Lauren slowly nodded. I knew what she wanted me to do. I didn't want to do it, but I also couldn't listen to the creature suffer. I moved toward it. The hurl suddenly felt incredibly heavy in my hands. When I finally stood over the creature, I saw its body clearly for the first time. The hands around its throat were covered in dark, clotted blood. Its arms looked human, but as I stared closer, I realized the skin wasn't completely bare. There was an extremely thin layer of pale fur covering it. The hairs were so fine that from a distance they were almost invisible. My eyes followed its body upward. Then I looked at its head. Its ears twitched weakly. Its mouth hung open. The creature had stopped groaning. Then its black eyes found mine. They were completely dark. I couldn't see any white, no visible pupils, nothing, just blackness. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't move. The creature stared at me, and I stared back. I don't know how long I stood there. Well, Lauren shouted from behind me. What are you waiting for? I tightened my grip around the hurl. The creature didn't move. It didn't seem frightened of me. That was perhaps the worst part. It seemed to understand what I was about to do, and somehow I felt that it wanted me to do it. I don't mean that it simply wanted relief from the wounds Dexter had caused. The feeling was deeper than that. Standing above it, staring into those black eyes, I had the strangest thought. I felt as though this creature had been suffering long before we found it, as though its entire existence was painful, as though it knew it wasn't supposed to be alive. Even the way Dexter had attacked it seemed different from the way a dog might normally attack another animal. He hadn't been curious. He hadn't hesitated. The moment he saw it, something inside him appeared to recognize it as wrong, unnatural. Like some ancient instinct had told him that this creature should not exist. I raised the hurl over my head. I told myself there would only be one strike. Hard, directly to the head. I had to make it quick. I couldn't miss. I couldn't make its suffering worse. The creature stared up at me without blinking. My hands began shaking. I imagined bringing the hurl down. I imagined the sound, the impact, the blood. I couldn't do it. I lowered the hurl, then I dropped it. It landed beside me among the dead leaves. I backed away. No. Lauren stared at me. Come on, I said. We're leaving. We can't leave it here. We have to. It's suffering. What else can we do for it, Lauren? She looked toward the creature. I raised my voice. We need to leave now. We untied Dexter. Getting him away was difficult. He continued pulling toward the creature, barking and snarling, forcing both of us to keep a tight grip on the lead. We moved back through the forest as quickly as we could. After several seconds, we heard it again. The groaning. The creature was still alive. Lauren slowed. Don't listen to it, I told her. The sound came again, louder, a horrible, wet, gurgling cry. We kept walking. Another cry followed us. Then another. Each time we passed another row of trees, the sound seemed somehow louder rather than quieter. It felt as though the creature was calling after us. Lauren began crying. Don't listen, I repeated. But I was listening too. I couldn't help it. Those sounds followed us all the way toward the edge of the forest. Even after we reached the railway, I felt as though I could still hear them behind us. By the time we returned to the village, neither Lauren nor I had said much. We cleaned Dexter as best we could. There was blood around his mouth and on his fur. We removed every visible trace before entering the house. Neither of us wanted Lauren's parents to ask questions. Later that day, we all sat down for supper. Lauren's mother had prepared a Sunday roast. Normally, I would have eaten everything in front of me. That evening, I barely touched my food. Lauren was worse. She sat across the narrow table from me, staring at her plate. Her parents continued talking as though nothing unusual had happened. I tried several times to catch Lauren's eye. She wouldn't look at me. Eventually, her mother noticed. "Aren't you hungry, love?" Lauren didn't immediately answer. Then she quietly said, "No." She stood and left the room. Her mother watched her go. Then she turned toward me. "Is she feeling unwell?" I panicked. I needed an explanation quickly. So I lied. I told her that Lauren and I had argued during our walk. It was the first believable thing that came into my head. Lauren's mother's expression changed. She didn't say anything openly rude, but she became colder toward me for the rest of the evening. I think she assumed whatever imaginary argument we'd had was my fault. John said almost nothing. But when Lauren left the room, I looked across the table and found him staring at me. There was something about the way he looked at me that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't simply the expression of a protective father who believed some English university student had upset his daughter. It felt different, more serious. For one strange moment, I wondered whether he knew. I told myself that was impossible. We had said nothing. We had cleaned Dexter. There was no way he could know what happened in the forest. Still, as John continued staring at me, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Had he heard stories about the bog? Had other people seen the creature before? Was that why Lauren had never explored the area while growing up? I never asked him. That night, when I eventually went upstairs, Lauren was already in bed. She appeared to be asleep. Or perhaps she was only pretending. I lay beside her in the darkness. I was exhausted. I had barely slept the previous night, and everything that had happened that morning had drained what little energy I had left. Still, sleep wouldn't come. The village outside was completely silent. The house was silent. But inside my head, I could still hear the creature. Those deep groans, those wet, painful cries. Over and over. Sometimes I could almost convince myself they were real. It felt as though the sounds had followed us all the way from the forest, as though the creature was somewhere outside the village, calling. I kept remembering its eyes, the complete blackness, the way it had looked up at me when I stood over it with the hurl raised. It hadn't tried to escape. It hadn't begged. It hadn't shown fear. It had simply waited. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had killed it. Would things have been different? Would I have slept better afterward, knowing I had ended its suffering? Or would I have spent the rest of my life wondering whether I had murdered something intelligent, something that understood exactly what I was doing? I don't know. I also don't know what happened to it after we left. Maybe it died there. Considering the damage Dexter had done to its throat, that seems likely. But another possibility has always bothered me. What if it survived? What if it managed to stand? What if it crawled deeper into the bog? What if it's still there? Lauren and I cut our visit short 2 days later. Honestly, I'm surprised we stayed that long. Neither of us wanted to go near the bog again. Lauren had grown up in that village her entire life. The thought that something like that had been living so close to her childhood home seemed to affect her deeply. She became desperate to leave, perhaps even more desperate than I was. Her parents didn't understand. We gave them some excuse about university commitments and needing to return sooner than expected. I don't know if they believed us. John certainly didn't seem convinced. Before we left, he shook my hand. His grip was firm. For a moment, he looked directly into my eyes. I expected him to ask me something. He never did. Sometimes I still think about that look. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe guilt and fear made me see meaning where there was none. Or maybe John knew exactly where we had gone that morning. Maybe he knew what was out there. I've often wondered whether local people had stories about the bog. Old stories. The kind people don't tell outsiders. Ireland is full of folklore. Anyone knows that. Stories about fairies, spirits, strange creatures, and things that live in lonely places have survived there for generations. But whatever we saw didn't feel like something from a children's story. It felt real, flesh and blood. It bled, it suffered. Dexter could bite it. I could smell its blood. I heard it breathing. Whatever that creature was, it existed. At least that morning it did. People sometimes ask whether Lauren and I stayed together. Yes, we did. We're still together now. But I'm afraid part of the reason isn't particularly romantic. Before Ireland, we were simply a young couple in love. After Ireland, something changed between us. We became the only two people in the world who knew what had happened in that forest. Lauren never told her parents. I never told mine. Neither of us told our friends. How could we? What would we even say? That we found a creature with the body of a human being and the head of a cow hiding in an abandoned peat forest. That our dog attacked it. That I nearly beat it to death with a hurling stick because we couldn't stand listening to it suffer. People would think we were lying, or drunk, or insane. Pictures would have helped. Sometimes I regret that Lauren didn't keep the image from her phone. In the panic of what happened afterward, neither of us even thought about it. Perhaps she deleted it. Perhaps it was never saved properly. Honestly, I don't know. We almost never discuss that part. We rarely discuss the incident at all. When we do, it's usually late at night. One of us will mention some small detail. The railway, the trees, Dexter barking, the black eyes. Then the room becomes quiet. Neither of us likes to continue. I sometimes think our silence is the reason the memory has remained so powerful. We never properly dealt with it. We simply carried it home with us. Over the years, I've tried to find explanations. Maybe it was a person suffering from some terrible medical condition. Maybe the cow's head was some kind of mask. But I know what I saw when I stood directly above it. That was not a mask. The ears moved, the mouth opened, the eyes blinked. Or actually, that's another thing. I'm not sure I ever saw them blink. Maybe they did. I hope they did. I also tried telling myself that sleep deprivation affected my memory. I hadn't slept properly. Maybe my exhausted mind misunderstood what it was seeing. But Lauren saw the same thing. And Dexter certainly saw something. The blood on his teeth wasn't imaginary. The cries weren't imaginary. Lauren still remembers them too. Sometimes I think the strangest part of the entire experience was the feeling I had before it happened. That warning. For 3 days, I knew something was wrong. I had no reason to know. Nothing unusual had happened. Yet some part of me seemed to understand that we were moving towards something terrible. Maybe that's why I couldn't sleep. Maybe if I had slept normally that night, we never would have gone for the early walk. We never would have entered the bog. We never would have found the railway. We never would have seen the creature. That thought bothers me. Because if my bad feeling was really some kind of warning, then why did it lead me directly toward the thing I was supposed to avoid? I don't have an answer. Another question bothers me even more. Why was the creature watching us? When we first saw it behind the tree, it wasn't running away. It wasn't moving through the forest. It was hiding, watching. Its arms were wrapped around the trunk, almost like a frightened child peeking around a doorway. Was it curious about us? Was it afraid? Was it waiting for something? And if Dexter hadn't attacked it, what would it have done? Would it have stayed there? Would it have followed us? I don't know. I don't think I ever will. For years, Lauren and I have carried the story alone. In a strange way, that shared secret became another bond between us. Not necessarily a healthy one. Sometimes I wonder whether we remain together partly because separating would mean losing the only other person who could confirm that the experience really happened. Lauren knows I'm not crazy. I know she isn't crazy. When I remember those black eyes and start questioning my own memory, I can look at her and know that she saw them too. When she wakes from a nightmare about that forest, she knows she doesn't have to explain it to me. We have each other. And for a long time, that was enough. But lately, I've started feeling differently. I don't want to carry the memory in silence forever. I don't want that morning to remain something locked inside the two of us, growing larger every time we refuse to speak about it. That's why I'm finally telling this story. Not to my family, not to Lauren's parents, not to our friends. I'm telling it anonymously, to strangers who have no reason to believe me and no way to prove whether any of this happened. Maybe that's easier. You can call it a supernatural encounter. You can call it a strange animal. You can say we misunderstood what we saw. You can say the entire thing was impossible. Honestly, I don't care anymore. I know what I saw. Lauren knows what she saw. And somewhere in that abandoned forest, beside an old railway cutting through the Irish bogland, we left something bleeding beneath the trees. For a long time afterward, I told myself that it must have died, that there was no possible way it survived Dexter's attack. But late at night, when I remember the strength of those groans following us through the forest, I sometimes wondered. I wonder whether it was really dying. I wonder whether it was calling us back. And every now and then I find myself thinking about John, about the way he stared at me across the dinner table, about the expression on his face when we suddenly announced that we were leaving early, about the way he looked into my eyes when he shook my hand goodbye. Perhaps he knew nothing. Perhaps I'm imagining things. But there is one thought I have never been able to completely remove from my mind. What if Lauren and I weren't the first people from that village to see it? What if the reason nobody talked about the bog wasn't because there was nothing there? What if everybody already knew? Lauren and I have never gone back to that forest. I don't think we ever will. And after everything that happened, there's something else I've realized. The thing that frightens me most isn't remembering what that creature looked like. It isn't remembering the blood. It isn't even remembering those impossible black eyes staring into mine while I held the hurl above its head. The thing that frightens me most is remembering the moment after we left, walking through the trees, dragging Dexter away, listening as the creature cried behind us. Each time we moved farther away, its voice should have become quieter. But it didn't. It became louder, as though it had stood up, as though it was following. I never turned around to check. Neither did Lauren. Maybe that was the smartest decision we made that morning. Maybe it wasn't. All I know is that we eventually reached the edge of the forest, and the sounds finally stopped. But even now, years later, some nights I still hear them in my dreams. And when I do, they don't sound far away. They sound like they're coming from somewhere just behind me. Lauren and I still haven't told the people in our lives what happened. Maybe we never will. But at least now, by telling this to strangers under an anonymous name, the secret no longer belongs only to us. Maybe now Lauren and I can finally stop carrying it alone. Maybe now we can finally move on. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Story 4. If I leave this shed, it will kill me. At least I think it will. Maybe the better question is whether it will ever leave. I have been trapped in here for 10 terrible days, and during that time, something inside my mind has started to break. When I was younger, someone once told me that being alone for too long could drive a person insane. I remember laughing when I heard it. I thought it was ridiculous. How could simply being alone make someone lose their mind? I understand now. Only a sane person can laugh at madness. Once madness gets inside you, once it begins eating through your thoughts, there is nothing funny about it anymore. In the shed, I can feel it growing inside me like a fungus. Every hour I spend alone seems to take another small piece of who I used to be. Sometimes I wonder if I will ever leave. Maybe I will stay here until there is nothing left of me except a body lying on the dirty wooden floor. I imagine myself dead more often than I should. My skin cold, my lips pale, my eyes gray and empty. I imagine insects crawling across me and maggots twisting inside my stomach. I imagine my body slowly becoming part of the dirt beneath the shed. Death has become my closest companion. I think about it while I'm awake, and when I finally manage to sleep, I dream about it. Sometimes death has no face. Sometimes it has the creature's face. When I press my ear against the floor, I can hear the thing outside. It is always there, waiting, circling the shed again and again as if the small building is a planet, and the creature has been trapped in its orbit. Every time it passes the bushes beside the wall, I hear the branches moving, leaves scrape together, twigs snap beneath its weight. Its footsteps are heavy. Thump, thump, thump. Sometimes I think it sounds like a giant wolf walking around outside, but no wolf moves like this thing does. There is something wrong with the rhythm of its steps. Sometimes it walks on 4 legs. Sometimes, I swear, it sounds like it rises onto 2. Every now and then the door rattles. Not violently. That would almost be better. Instead, it pushes against the door gently, almost playfully. It knows I am inside. It knows I am listening. I think it enjoys this. The soft knocking feels like death, tapping its fingers against my door, reminding me that time is running out. The shed is old. The wood is beginning to rot in places. The metal hinges are rusted. The door was never designed to protect someone from a monster. I know that. The creature knows it too. Sometimes when it slowly scratches the outside wall, I imagine its mouth opening into a smile. I imagine rotting teeth showing between wet lips. You don't have much longer. That is what I imagine it's saying. But when it actually speaks, it is much worse. The first time I heard its voice was on the 5th day. I had already been hungry for so long that my stomach had mostly stopped complaining. My tongue felt thick and dry. My head hurt constantly. Then, sometime after darkness fell, I heard someone crying outside. At first, I thought I was dreaming. It sounded like a person, A frightened person. A woman, maybe. Please. The voice came from just beyond the door. Please let me in. I stopped breathing. For one wonderful second, hope exploded inside me. Someone was alive. Someone had come to help me. I crawled toward the door. Then the voice changed. It became too deep, then too high. Then it sounded like a child. Then an old man. Please, it said again. The word stretched strangely, as though the thing speaking had heard humans use the word, but did not fully understand how a human mouth was supposed to say it. I backed away from the door. The crying continued. It begged me, it pleaded, it sobbed. Between the sobs, I heard something else, a tiny sound, a giggle. That was when I understood. The creature was pretending. It was a wolf wearing a sheep's voice. It had heard people speaking before. Maybe it had listened to them scream. Maybe it had learned from them. That fifth night, I did not sleep at all. I sat in the corner with my knees against my chest, staring at the thin space beneath the metal door. Moonlight came through the gap. Every now and then its shadow blocked the light. It was standing directly outside, waiting like a doorman. I remembered the story of Sisyphus, the man who was punished by being forced to push a boulder up a hill forever, only to watch it roll back down each time. I wondered whether he had felt like this. Did he ever stop hoping? Did he ever accept that there was no escape? An urge to open the door came over me that night. It frightened me almost as much as the creature. A voice inside my own head whispered that I should just do it. Open the door. End the waiting. Maybe death would be better than this. But I resisted. I pressed myself against the wall and covered my ears. I would not give it what it wanted. Not while it was outside begging me to let it in. Its claws scratched lightly against the metal. Scratch? 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 Then came that almost human voice. Please. A pause. Please. Another quiet giggle. I understood the truth then. It would not be better to leave, but it would not be better to stay. There are no windows in the shed. Some days I am grateful for that. There have been times when the creature suddenly throws itself against the walls. The entire shed shakes. Dust falls from the ceiling. The door bends inward slightly. During those moments, I am glad I cannot see it. I have wondered whether it is hungry. I know I am. Hunger has become something beyond pain. It is like an empty animal living inside me. But thirst is worse. Every morning when moisture collects on the wooden walls, I lick the drops away. The water tastes like dirt and old wood, but I don't care. I have learned that a thirsty person will stop caring about many things. Hunger and thirst have changed me. So has curiosity. During the longest periods of silence, I begin to wonder what is really outside. Sometimes the silence becomes so deep that it feels like water filling the shed. It rises around my ankles, my knees, my chest, until I feel like I'm drowning in it. During those moments, I would give almost anything for one small look outside. Just a glimpse. Is the creature really there? What if there is nothing outside at all? What if everyone else in the world is already dead? Maybe I am the last person alive. Maybe somehow, by running into this shed on the first day, I survived something that killed everyone else. I imagine myself as the only survivor on an empty planet. One lonely person stranded in a broken spaceship that will never fly again. No rescue, no voices, no family, nothing. Then another thought comes. What if none of this is real? What if the shed is not real? What if the creature is not real? What if I am lying in a hospital somewhere, trapped inside a dream? Maybe the voice outside belongs to a doctor. Maybe they are trying to convince me to open a door that exists only inside my mind. Maybe I am the monster. Maybe there are normal people outside wondering why some terrified, crazy kid has locked themselves inside a shed and refuses to come out. Maybe when the door finally opens, I will wake up in a clean hospital room. My mother will be there. She will be angry at first. Then she will hug me. She will tell me everything is okay. Doctors will speak quietly in the hallway about how sick I was. Someone will give me water. Someone will give me food. I will go home. Those thoughts helped me during the first few days. Back then, my hope still moved like the ocean, up and down, a high and low. Now there are no highs. The more the creature speaks, the harder it becomes to lie to myself. It is real. I feel its voice vibrating through the walls. I hear its claws. I smell it when it comes too close. There is no doctor outside. There is no rescue worker. There is no friendly stranger begging me to open the door. The thing waiting outside is not a man. It is not a woman. It is not anything human. It is something else, something cruel, something that should never have existed. And after 10 days, I still have not truly seen it. That almost makes it worse. The unknown shape outside has become as frightening to me as death itself. On the first day, I heard the screaming. I will never forget it. The afternoon had been hot and sticky, the kind of summer heat that makes your clothes cling to your skin. Then everything changed. People started screaming. At first, I thought there had been an accident. Then I heard more voices. Hundreds, maybe. The sounds came from everywhere. I ran. I don't remember making the decision to hide in the shed. I only remember the door slamming behind me. That first night, the temperature dropped. Cold air slipped through the cracks in the wooden walls. I curled up in the corner and covered my ears. It didn't help. The screams continued for hours. Men, women, children. Some screamed in high, sharp voices. Others made deep sounds that barely seemed human. Until that night, I had never really thought about the fact that everyone screams differently. I had never thought about many things. I had never thought that maybe people should keep emergency food in their sheds. I had never thought I should learn how to barricade a house. I had never thought I should be able to run faster, or fight, or hide. There were a lot of things that had never occurred to me before the world ended. At night, the creatures make sounds, low hooting calls. The first time I heard one, I thought of an owl with something caught in its throat. Then, far away, another creature answered. Then another. There are more of them. I don't know how many. Hundreds? Millions? Maybe billions. Perhaps they are everywhere now, crawling across the world like parasites. But there is only one of me. One person inside one shed. Nothing to eat. Almost nothing to drink. Nowhere to go. Sometimes I imagine the Earth from space. A tiny blue planet surrounded by darkness. Somewhere on that planet is this shed. And inside, it is me. So small that no one would ever find me. All I have left is this place. The creature has turned me into something I barely recognize. I used to be a person. Now I am a frightened animal hiding in a wooden box. I have spent hours bargaining with no one. I promised things to the dirt beneath me. I promised things to God. I promised things to the walls. Give me another chance. Let me go back. Let me change something. Maybe if I had stayed inside the house that day. Maybe if I had run faster. Maybe if I had known what was coming. But deep down, I think nothing would have changed. Somehow I know that. I used to wonder how the world would end. I watched scary movies. I read stories. I imagined climate change destroying cities. Nuclear missiles crossing the sky. Poison gas, robots, zombies. I feel stupid thinking about those things now. Like a little kid asking a parent a silly question. Mommy, how will the world end? The strange thing is, maybe the world hasn't ended. Not really. The world is still here. The grass still grows, the sun still rises, the wind still moves through the trees. The world did not end. It only ended for us. Human beings thought the world belonged to us. Now the creatures have taken it. Maybe that is simply how nature works. Humans took land from animals. Animals took it from other animals. Something stronger always comes next. The screaming stopped sometime during the second day. By the second night, the silence was so complete that I could hear my heartbeat. Sometimes it seemed too loud. I would lie on the floor and listen to it pounding. Thump, 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 like a child bouncing on a pogo stick. When the wind blew in the right direction, a terrible smell reached the shed. Sweet, rotten, heavy. The first time I smelled it, I nearly vomited. I knew what it was without anyone telling me. Death, bodies, maybe hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Every few hours, I would hear those distant hoots again. One creature calling, another answering, then silence. Always silence. Except for the one outside my shed. Its footsteps never stayed away for long. Soft thudding. Slow circles. Again and again. Sometimes, when exhaustion finally pulls me into sleep, I dream of the creature as a shadow swinging above me on a circus trapeze. An audience surrounds the ring. But the audience is made of wolves. They lift their heads toward the sky and howl. I stand alone in the center of the ring. I try to move. My feet will not lift. Roots have grown from my legs deep into the earth. I have been standing there for thousands of years. Then loudspeakers crackle above me. A child laughs. Mommy, tell me now, how will the world end? I wake up shaking. The dream comes almost every night. Sleep is supposed to give people rest. Mine only gives me another kind of prison. Now I have started thinking about running. The house isn't far away. I can picture the path perfectly. Out of the shed, across the yard, up the stairs, through the door, down the hallway, into my bedroom. I could make it. I think I could. Sometimes I close my eyes and imagine the cool silver doorknob in my hand. I imagine pushing open my bedroom door. I see my bed, my pillows, my blankets, my stuffed animals. I can almost smell the laundry detergent. I imagine crawling beneath the covers. Everyone knows monsters cannot get you under the blankets. At least, that is what children believe. My ceiling fan would turn above me. Squeak, rattle, squeak. A mechanical ballerina slowly dancing in circles. I would be warm. I would be safe. The creature would search for me, but never find me. Eventually it would leave. It would finally go away. It would go away. That is what I keep telling myself. It has been 4 hours since I last heard it. 4 hours. No footsteps, no scratching, no voices, no movement in the bushes, nothing. This has not happened since the third day. Maybe it finally left. Maybe it got bored. Maybe it found someone else. Another house, another shed, another frightened person to torment. 10 days ago, I might have felt guilty for wishing this creature on another human being. But 10 days ago feels like another lifetime. The person I was then no longer exists. There is no room left inside me to care about strangers. I barely have enough strength to care about myself. Still, I hesitate. What happens if I reach the house? Can these creatures open doors? Can they break windows? Could I call for help? Would anyone answer? I stop myself. Doesn't matter. I need to follow the plan. Shed, Yard, stairs, door, hallway, bedroom. I can do this. The creature is gone. This is my chance. Maybe my only chance. I imagine myself as a rabbit escaping from a fox hiding in the bushes, its mouth wet with blood. Slowly, I reach for the shed door. My hand trembles. I pull. The metal hinges creak. The sound seems impossibly loud. I freeze. Nothing happens. I open the door a little more. Fresh air touches my face. I nearly cry. I had forgotten what real air felt like. I breathe deeply. For the first time in 10 days, my lungs fill completely. It feels divine. I look outside. The world appears almost normal. That is the strangest part. The lawns are still green. Cars are parked in driveways. Houses stand exactly where they always stood. But there are no people, no engines, no televisions, no children playing, no lights glowing behind windows. Everything is dark and still. It looks like a picture in a gardening magazine after all the people have been removed. My neighborhood has become a ghost town. For a second, I wonder again, am I really the last person alive? Is it only me and the creature now? Two living things alone in an empty world. I push the thought away. I cannot think about that. Not now. The house is right there. So close. I fill my lungs. My heart beats faster. My legs shake. Then I run. The moment I leave the shed, adrenaline floods my body. My feet strike the ground. I hear blood pounding in my ears. The yard seems both tiny and endless. I keep running. I'm close. So close. My sneakers hit the steps. The wooden stairs creak beneath me. For one perfect second, I feel alive again. I'm not the prisoner in the shed. I am not the last person on earth. I am just a kid running home. I imagine going back to school. I imagine sitting on the bus. I imagine normal mornings and boring afternoons. Everything I once hated suddenly seems beautiful. I am going to make it. I am going to be safe. But somewhere inside me, I already know the truth. I think I have always known it. Maybe I knew it from the moment the shed door slammed shut behind me on the first day. I know how this story ends. There was a boy who used to ride my school bus. He once told me a story about a family trapped on an island. A tiger lived there too. One by one, the tiger ate every member of the family. I remember sitting on that sticky bus seat, the cheap plastic warm from the spring sunlight. I leaned toward him, completely caught up in the story. Only one person in the family was left alive. I had to know what happened. So what happens to the last person? I asked. The boy looked at me. He opened his mouth, showing his crooked baby teeth. Well, he said, they all die in the end. That's just how it goes. I didn't believe him. Children don't really believe in death. Not completely. Death happens in movies. Death happens in stories. Death happens to old people you barely know. When you are a child, the sun always seems to be shining through the school bus window. But the sun has gone down now. That's just how it goes. I'm almost at the door when something catches the back of my shirt. The force pulls me backward. For half a second, I am suspended between running and falling. Then I hear fabric tear. I scream. Jaws close around my shoulder. Teeth sink deep into me. Pain explodes through my body. The smell hits me next. Rotting fish, wet garbage, old meat. The stink of the creature fills my nose. Its jaws release my shoulder. I feel bile rising in my throat. Someone nearby is screaming. The sound is high and terrible. For a second, I wonder who it is. Then I understand. It is me. Of course it is me. There is nobody else left. I suppose it is my turn now. My turn to join all the voices I heard on the first day. My turn to become part of that great screaming song at the end of humanity. The creature throws me onto the lawn. My back hits the ground. I keep screaming. Somewhere, maybe another person is hiding inside another shed. Maybe they hear me. Maybe they are sitting in darkness with their hands over their ears. Maybe they wonder what kind of person makes a scream like mine. Maybe to them, I am just another strange bird calling in the distance. A sound they do not understand. They are probably waiting for their own chance to escape. They are probably thinking the creature outside has gone away. The cat has caught me now. There will be no second chance. The creature rolls me onto my back. For the first time, I finally see it. For 10 days, I imagined its face. The truth is worse. It resembles a wolf, but only in the roughest way. It has no fur. Its skin is gray and patchy, covered in strange colors like mold growing in a laboratory dish. Some parts of its skin are almost transparent. I can see bones beneath it, muscle, dark blood moving through veins. Its body seems too thin, but it is incredibly strong. Its legs bend in ways they should not. It moves almost like a person sometimes. That is the most disgusting thing about it. It is not human. But something about the way it moves feels like an imitation of humanity. A cruel copy. A monster trying to remember how people walk. Its body is made of loose skin and sharp bones. Its mouth opens. A chattering sound comes from its throat. Clicking, whining, broken pieces of noise. When the sounds come together, they almost resemble speech. Almost. The creature moves closer. Then it disappears from my view. All I can see now is the sky. Blue. Perfect blue. Thin white clouds drift above me like icing spread across a cake. It is a beautiful day. That seems funny somehow. The world is ending for me beneath such a beautiful sky. Somewhere far away from my thoughts, I feel the creature biting my leg. I know it should hurt. Maybe it does. But the pain feels distant now. Ah, that is okay. I don't need that leg anymore, do I? A loud ringing fills my ears. When I close my eyes, I see the boy from the school bus. He is balancing on a wooden beam. He smiles at me. He is telling me about the island again. About the tiger. That's just how it goes. My head hurts. Everything is becoming fuzzy. The memories are disappearing at the edges. School bus. The boy. My bedroom. My mother. Who was that boy again? I open my eyes. The creature is staring down at me. Its small eyes study my face. Its lips pull back. It looks satisfied, excited, happy. I stare back at it. Strangely, I feel myself smile. All that time hiding. 10 days in the dark. 10 days imagining the worst thing in the universe. And this is it. This ugly, rotten thing. For some reason, it almost seems funny. I think I laugh. Or maybe I only imagine that I do. The creature seems to fall backward. No, that's not right. I am falling. My head hits the ground. I hear the sound. Thud. But I don't feel it. Suddenly, I am floating. This isn't so bad. There is foam around the creature's mouth. Maybe its saliva has something in it. Poison. Venom. Something that makes everything soft and distant. I giggle again. Maybe the whole world has something in it. Maybe life itself was always some strange poison and none of us noticed. I think about Alice falling into Wonderland. I wonder if she was afraid. I wonder where my white rabbit went. Maybe the creature ate him too. My eyelids are getting heavy. The blue sky begins to disappear. I hope the end is fast. I hope it is gentle. I did pretty well, I think. 10 days. I survived 10 days. That has to mean something. And I am not inside the shed anymore. That is the important thing. I escaped. Maybe not in the way I wanted, maybe not in the way I dreamed about. But I am finally outside. I can feel the air. I can see the sky. I can see the sunlight. For 10 terrible days, I wanted nothing more than to leave that shed. Now I have. The creature can do whatever it wants. The world is quiet. The sun is warm. And for the first time in 10 days, I am finally free. Story 5. He started visiting me once a month. At first, I barely noticed him. Then once a month became once a week. Once a week became every few days. And before long, he was there every single day. The worst part was that I could not tell anyone that I had no idea who he was. I could not speak. I could not move my arms or legs. I could not lift a finger, turn my head, or force my mouth to form a single useful word. My entire mind was trapped inside a useless body, like a person locked inside a room with no doors and no windows. I could see, I could hear, I could think. That was all. Everything I knew, everything I feared, every question burning inside me was trapped behind my eyes. The nurses never understood. Whenever the man arrived, they welcomed him warmly. Sometimes I heard them talking in the hallway before he entered my room. Oh, it's so sad. His poor nephew. I heard the boy can't move at all. He's only 19. Such a terrible accident. What a good man coming to visit him so often. They admired him. That was what frightened me most. They saw a caring family member. I saw a stranger. Not once did anyone ask him for identification while I was awake. Not once did I hear a nurse ask him to explain exactly how he was related to me. He called himself my uncle, and everyone simply accepted it. They smiled when he arrived. They opened doors for him. They gave him privacy. Sometimes they even apologized for interrupting us when they came in to check my blood pressure or medication. If I could have screamed, I would have screamed until my throat tore apart. I had never seen that man before in my life. He was not my uncle. I knew that. At least I thought I knew that. There was nobody left to argue for me. My parents were dead. They had died in the same accident that put me in the hospital. That was what I'd been told. The accident had taken almost everything. One careless person behind the wheel of a car had destroyed my entire life in a few seconds. It was strange to think about. A machine made from metal, glass, rubber, and plastic had crashed into another machine. And because of that, my parents were gone and I was trapped inside a hospital bed. I remembered waking up surrounded by white. White walls, white sheets, white clothes, bright white lights, nurses with white teeth smiling down at me and speaking as though I were a frightened child. Good morning. You're doing great today. Let's get you cleaned up. Try to stay positive. Positive? That word almost made me laugh, though my body could not even do that. The doctors eventually explained that my injuries were severe. They said the damage to my nervous system was extensive. They said there was a chance I might never walk again. Then, as weeks became months, their language changed. The chance became an expectation. The expectation became a fact. I would never walk again. I would probably never speak normally again. My body would remain mostly useless. For the first year, boredom was almost worse than pain. Days passed in slow, endless stretches. I stared at the ceiling. I watched sunlight crawl across the floor. I listened to televisions playing programs I did not care about. I listened to machines beep. I listened to nurses talk about their weekends. I listened to other patients cry. At some point, I stopped caring about time. Maybe part of me had started disappearing. Maybe a person could slowly melt away inside their own head if nobody heard them for long enough. Then the stranger started visiting. At first, I was curious. Maybe he really was family. Maybe there was some distant uncle I had forgotten. Maybe my parents had never spoken about him. Perhaps he had lived far away. Perhaps he had heard about the accident and decided to visit. I tried to believe that. I wanted to believe it. Anything was better than the alternative. But after a week of watching him, I became certain he was pretending. He knew things about me, but they felt rehearsed. He brought photographs sometimes, but I did not recognize them. He told stories about my childhood, but none of them felt familiar. He spoke with emotion, yet something about his sadness seemed misplaced, like an actor delivering lines from a script he had memorized too many times. And he called me Carter. That was not my name. At least I was sure it was not. One afternoon, he entered my room carrying his usual bag. Carter? I closed my eyes. It was the closest thing I had to turning my back on him. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then I felt the bed shift as he sat beside me. I opened my eyes and looked toward him. His face was rough and tired. He had dark stubble covering his jaw and deep lines around his eyes. His hair was beginning to gray near the temples. He smiled at me. Not a happy smile. A sad one. "Hey, buddy." I hated when he called me that. He reached out and pushed my hair away from my forehead. My hair had grown long. One of the nurses kept saying she would cut it soon. I wanted to pull away from his hand. I could not. My body remained still. A shell. A dead thing with a living person trapped inside it. He continued brushing my hair back for a moment before reaching into his bag. He pulled out several children's toys, a small plastic train, a blue car, a toy airplane. He placed them on the bed. "Remember these, Carter?" No, I did not. He picked up the train and moved it slowly across the blanket. "Your dad bought you one just like this." My eyes followed it. Not because I was interested, because I had learned something. If I fought him, even silently, he became more intense. If I refused to look at something, he moved it closer. If I closed my eyes, he begged me to open them, so I played along. I followed the train with my eyes. He smiled. "Oh, there you go." I wanted to kill him. The thought surprised me. I had never hated anyone so much. But underneath that hatred was fear, a deep, cold fear. I felt like I was floating in dark water with a shark nearby. The smartest thing to do was remain still. Do not splash. Do not bleed. Do not let it know you are afraid. Eventually, he gathered the toys. I closed my eyes again. Soon, I thought. Soon he would leave. Soon I would be alone. Soon I would go back to thinking about the future. It was ridiculous, maybe, but I had started planning one. During long nights when sleep refused to come, I imagined myself recovering. I imagined leaving the hospital. I imagined going back to school. I had decided I wanted to become a pilot. I pictured myself sitting inside a cockpit. I imagined clouds outside the windows. I imagined my hands moving across controls. My hands. Moving. That dream kept me alive. Then the man spoke. "You know, Carter, I've been talking with the nurses." Something in his voice made me open my eyes. He was smiling. Behind him stood one of the nurses. She was holding a wheelchair. "We all agreed," he continued, "that it would be best for you to come home." For several seconds, I did not understand. Home? With him? No. My heart seemed to slam against my ribs. I tried to shout. Nothing came out. I pushed every bit of strength I had toward my throat. The sound that escaped was a weak, wet gurgle. The nurse smiled brightly. "Oh, Someone sounds excited. Excited? I stared at her. Please, please look at me. Really look at me. I tried to widen my eyes. I tried to make her understand. She only smiled. The man looked overjoyed. My uncle. That was what everyone called him. My uncle helped move me into the wheelchair. I could do nothing as he took me through the hospital. People smiled as we passed. A nurse waved goodbye. Someone wished me luck. The automatic doors opened. Cold air touched my face. It was the first time I had been outside in what felt like forever, and I was being taken away by a stranger. He lifted me from the wheelchair like a heavy bag and pushed me into the passenger seat of his car. My body folded awkwardly. He buckled me in. When he walked around the car, my weight shifted forward. My head and chest began falling toward the dashboard. I could not stop myself. Just before my face struck it, he opened the driver's door, saw me, and rushed around. He pulled me upright. Careful, Carter. I wanted to laugh. Careful. He adjusted my seat and placed a pillow beside my head. Then he started driving. He talked constantly. I ignored him. Fields passed outside the window. Roads disappeared behind us. The city became smaller. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me into sleep. Before I drifted away, I thought about the one secret I had not told anyone. Yesterday, I had moved one of my fingers. Only slightly. Barely enough to see. But I had moved it. That tiny movement had changed everything. Maybe the doctors were wrong. Maybe I was getting better. Maybe I could escape. The man's house was far from everything. I learned that slowly. There were fields around it, and farmland stretching into the distance. The nearest neighbors were far enough away that shouting would probably be useless. Not that I could shout. He placed me in a large blue recliner every morning. It was soft and deep. A neck pillow kept my head upright. A folding table sat beside me with food and water. The television stayed on for hours. Sometimes he tried to make me watch old shows. Carter, please. This was your favorite. One afternoon, spaceships moved across the television screen. I kept my eyes closed. Come on, he said. You love this. I ignored him. Whenever I made direct eye contact with him for too long, something strange happened inside my head. A flicker, a sharp pressure. Almost like a memory trying to force its way through a locked door. It hurt. So I avoided his eyes. After several minutes, he sighed and walked into the kitchen. The moment I heard him moving dishes, I started practicing. First my fingers, then my toes. The movement was still weak, but every day it improved. At night, when he believed I was asleep, I tensed muscles throughout my body. Hands, feet, legs, face. I never let him see. He called himself Joseph. That was the only name I had for him. Joseph cared for me every day. He cleaned me, fed me, moved me, talked to me. And I hated him for every second of it. He was patient in a way that frightened me. Sometimes he brought food and tried to make it into some kind of memory game. Okay, Carter. Blink 3 times if this is your favorite. I stared at him. You know this one? I kept staring. Please, Carter. Just eat. One evening, I kept my mouth tightly closed while he tried to feed me. I wanted to scream. My name was not Carter. I did not know him. I did not want his food.